the Switch 2. Not to be confused with this dusty thing, but you can see the similarities. 2025 June, we got this thing. It broke records for most sold console on launch, which is kind of crazy. But there are a lot of haters. So we're going to talk about whether you should get it, whether you shouldn't get it, and what like, you know, what it's like using it. Okay, so let's go back in time a little bit. Back to like 2017. You know, we got the Switch. It was a very revolutionary console. It was insanely popular. We probably would not have as many of the handheld consoles today if it was not for that. Pretty much the same thing, you know. You got the controllers. They weren't magnetic, but it was very underpowered. Battery life was not bad. You know, you could get a solid 6 hours from a Switch. After the red box. The red box had so many issues with battery. In fact, they actually switched it out when they did some tinkering around with this thing. I have mixed feelings about this thing, but we'll talk about that later. Okay, so let's go down a list of differences between the original Switch and this Switch. Original Switch, screen was like 6.2 inches. This has an 8-inch display, which is a big upgrade. But they took away OLED. They were like, nope, we're going back to LCD, but they did add HDR, built-in HDR too. Battery size. Now, this does have technically a bigger battery. It has a 5,220 milliamp battery, but with all of the power combined, it only gets you like 2 hours, maybe 3 tops. Switch, original, you could get, hell, some people got like 5 hours in, and I think that is a reasonable time. You know, if you're on a plane or something, you can't charge it. That's like pretty important. CPU, GPU, whatever, they both had NVIDIA, but the difference is this is an entirely custom-made GPU. They support ray tracing and DLSS. Now, ray tracing is like definition here.
It's just real-time shaders.
DLSS is deep learning super sampling. So it helps with upscaling. When you dock it, it can go up to 4K, which is really nice. Up to 4K. It's not always 4K. It also is not native 4K, which is where DLSS comes in. Deep learning super sampling is kind of like filling in gaps, you know? It makes sure that when it upscales to like these way bigger pixel densities, it's like, oh, hello, hi, yes. That was my cat. It like fills in gaps so that it doesn't look like super like stretched out or like there's no artifacting. Ergonomics, let's say, you know, this is where this comes in. I hate holding this thing. It feels so bad. It feels like I've gotten so many hand cramps from this. Anyways, this feels nicer, you know, it's the same thickness. They're not changed in any way, but it just feels nicer to hold, you know. You have these more curved edges. The texture is nice, and it's just bigger. Some people might not like that. You know, some people love the Switch Lite. I almost called it a Switch Mini. Let's talk about storage. This thing only had 32 gigabytes. That gets you like 5 games, alright? It is not usable. You can't do anything. This gives you a whopping 256 gigabytes. Not that crazy, I know. But it's exciting that we have that finally. You know, having to buy external storage, which you might have to do still, but it was a lot more like mandatory for this, because you could barely put anything on here. You know, you had to get at least like another 64 gigabytes for anything reasonable. But, you know, I guess people lived with it for a while. The one annoying thing is that this only accepts express cards, because they are a lot faster, around like 800 megabytes per second. This one, you could do things like ultra, here's a list of them. Here's what you can use. But it was a lot more easy to expand with these. Ease of use. Okay, I took this away, but I'm bringing it back again. You know, this is so much more portable. You can take this everywhere. You know, look, it's smaller than the screen. That's nuts. It's just, you know, you can fit this in your pocket so easily. Wow! It's just like, it's easier to bring places. I just hate holding it. Oh, I forgot to say that. The Switch OLED came with 64 gigabytes. Impressive. The Switch OLED also had a brighter screen because of the OLED screen, which means every pixel was individually lit compared to an LCD screen where it's backlit. That just makes it so much easier to get these vivid colors, you know, black looks like black instead of a dark gray, you know, blues, reds, everything just pops out more. Which is really sad, because it would have been really nice to get that screen on here. The Switch OLED also had a stand like this. It was more solid, you know, there wasn't this gap, but you got it, and it was so nice back then. It had good speakers, you know, I think this one has better speakers. They're definitely louder, that's for sure. This one, you know, ease of use, like I said, less hand cramps, you know, it's also easier to take these off. I love this. It doesn't have that, like, same click, you know, but it's just so easy just putting it in and then just pulling off. You know, it's so portable, right? You know, you can't put it in your pocket, but, you know, if you were carrying around your old Switch in, like, some bag, I doubt you can't fit it in there, right? Like, you can put this in your backpack or your satchel, but, you know, it's kind of large. It does have an internal mic. It would be cool to see some games use this, but it seems like the only thing they're really focusing on is game chat, which is their new exciting gimmick. Besides that, you also have the mouse. You see right here, this little thing, it's a little camera. You can use it like a mouse. You just hold it like this. It's not very comfortable, but it works. You know, you can play a few matches of Fortnite. That's pretty exciting. You know. UI, you know, look at this. UI looks the same, you know. This is like, there's no difference. It's like a little bit rounded off. You get, look at the game chat icon right here. Whoa! What happens when you press it? It just starts a game chat. You know, there's nothing special. I don't know why they added a full button for it. Charging time. Both have 3 hours. Specs. This only ran handheld, 720, 30 frames per second. The bare minimum, you know. Go any lower than that, it's trash. I'd say 30 frames is trash, but it's usable, alright? You know, you can get a good game of Mario Odyssey in there, win a few Mario Kart matches. This finally has a 1080p native display with 60 frames per second. Finally. Jesus. Docked. This goes up to 1080p. This goes up to 4K 120 hertz, which is really useful. I don't have as many games to test it, but I think it just feels like smoother. Prices. This is cheap. This is like $200. Original Switch 350. OLED started at $350, now it's $400. This is $450. And if you get the Mario Kart bundle, you can get it for $500, which you save $30 on Mario Kart World. Kind of expensive, you know. But these like new handhelds coming out, you know, like the Xbox ROG Ally, these like PC handhelds are expensive. $1,000 or more. And like this starts to feel more reasonable, you know? Why do I not have high hopes for this? Nintendo is not very well known for their sequels, alright? 3DS, Wii U, GameCube. GameCube wasn't really the sequel, but after the Nintendo 64, which was an extremely powerful console, they were like, we need to bring something new. And it came with the GameCube. And that thing did not really do that well. It was fun, but so was the Wii U and the 3DS. I think one of the things saving this, while I hate these controllers, it looks different from the original Switch. You know, you only have these like little bezels in here. You got the bar right here. I'm sure if they went with the original full color, parents and stuff would always get confused, you know? It's still kind of boring now. Also, what are some of these features? The chat button, are you serious? And then soon enough, we're gonna have to start paying for it? Are you... Aesthetics, though. While we're on that, you know, the look at these controllers. It looks sleek, it looks nice, the texture's nice. It's boring. Cool, we got these little rings in here. But there's nothing special. You know, I've seen so many cool concepts, like a gradient or the colored buttons, and people have come up with like new special edition things for like the new Pokemon games, but I haven't seen anything like that for any like actual stuff. Okay, so this is why I don't think you should buy it. Let's say you have an OLED Switch right now. You already have this really beautiful display. You can already play all your games. It's like more of those like more of the professional Switch, you know. It's already, first of all, it's already an expensive one. It's close to this, $50 behind, which is like kind of absurd for what you're already getting. But I don't think you should buy it because you're not too far behind. Not that you shouldn't buy it, but you should hold off until, you know, that thing stops working or something. Now, why you should buy it is because of this thing. If you have this thing or original Switch, get rid of it. Don't get rid of it. Do whatever you want, but replace it with this thing because it is so much more capable. You get exclusives, you get better specs, just a better gaming experience. Switch Lite, maybe I could understand because the Switch Lite isn't for like professional gaming. It's for people who just get bored, they bring it with them if they're sitting in a lobby. This is good for if you really want to game on the go. You can play games like Cyberpunk 2077 on this thing. That's so nice. And there's more to come, you know? And like I said, these exclusives. You get Donkey Kong Bonanza, Mario Kart World, Metroid Prime 4 upgrade. It is a really good upgrade from these. People really don't like this thing. A lot of it is price of these games. $80 for Mario Kart. Alright. Let's start there. It's a fun game. Don't get me wrong. You know, free roam mode is amazing. All these cool, like, new gimmicks and stuff that you can do. Grinding rails, riding walls. And it really scares me, because, like, that means that there's going to be a lot more titles that are exclusively around that price. You know, 70, 80. We already see that with Metroid Prime, Donkey Kong Bonanza. Those are like $70, and it's nuts. What? Same with, like, the controllers. These are, like, $90. $90 a pop. But in reality, you're getting what you paid for. There's a lot to offer here. Graphics that are like PS4 Pro standards. And honestly, I think PlayStation 4 still kind of holds up. You know, you can play a lot of games on there. While they're ending support for a lot of games, I think it's a very powerful console. My honest opinion, buy whatever you want, man. If you really enjoy this, then spend your money to your heart's content. Buy whatever you want. Play whatever you want. If you're getting this to play Minecraft for the Nintendo Switch, get out of here. But if that's really what you want to do on here, have at it. That's pretty much all I gotta say. I've really enjoyed this console. You know, I get to play a lot of games. I think the upgrade packs are scams, you know. $10 for Tears of the Kingdom to look like slightly better. That's bullcrap. But I have enjoyed them, you know. It's so much nicer playing this game at like a reasonable frame rate. I'm a Nintendo dog. A Nintendo dog. Yep. That's all. Yep. Yeah. In, you know, 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 the, you know, you know, I've, you know, 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 and yeah. It doesn't have I just got this caught in the carpet.